Jesus Christ was crucified between two thieves, but there were a lot more there that day. He was crucified with a lot of thieves, with a lot of murderers, with a lot of liars, with a lot of gossips. You see, I was there that day. Being identified with Christ, I was there, and my sin was paid on that cross that day. I was crucified, my old self. Now, my old self is a person that I was, my unregenerate self, my sin-loving self that I was before Christ transformed me into something brand new. I don't even know that person anymore. That person had the same address as I had, but that person is dead and gone. That person has been crucified. They are a history lesson. They no longer exist. What Christ did in my life so radically transformed who I am and what I am that that person ceased to exist. The old self was crucified, that the body of sin might be done away. You may have the word destroyed there. What that does not mean is annihilated. What it literally says is rendered ineffective. Rendered ineffective. The body of sin, your flesh, that sin nature within you, was not annihilated at all, but was rendered ineffective. No longer had the power to call the shots in your life because you were crucified. The old person is dead. You're a brand new person in Jesus Christ. Now, do you know those things about yourself? That those things are true about who you are? Because unless you stand on truths like that, you are just going to fall for everything that Satan throws your way. Satan has got you figured out. He knows what you'll fall for. He knows what your pet sins are. And he will just draw you into them whenever he needs to. Because you haven't figured out that I don't have to fall. I don't have to be a puppet to sin. I know that something has happened in my life that makes me transform. And sin no longer has that right in my life. Now, do you understand that about who you are? The bottom of verse 6, it says, so that we would no longer be slaves to sin. So that we no longer would be slaves to sin. No Christian has a right to be a slave to any sin. God made total provision for us to be completely delivered from sin. We're still going to have a sin nature. We're still going to have temptation. But now you have a choice to say, no, I'm not going to do that. That is the power that is in you as a person that Christ has redeemed. Now, I have a strong affection for the military. I never served in the military. I was a teenager in the 70s. Whenever the Vietnam War ended, I was about 14 years of age, and they weren't drafting 14-year-olds at that time, and so I didn't have to worry about that. And it was before the time that they made young men start signing at the post office or registering for the draft at the post office, so I didn't have to do that. And so I never ended up in the military. But I have a deep affection for the military because the military are those who have committed their lives for our well-being, for our protection. Without them, we would be very, very vulnerable. But you know, I live today in a country with certain freedoms because of people who did serve in those capacities before I was ever born. There were people who fought wars, defended this land, defended my freedoms, that when I was born in America, all of a sudden I had all these things just given to me. Because I am identified with everything that they did for me. And so I have certain freedoms. You know, Jesus Christ purchased freedom on the cross. When I came to faith in Him, I identified with what He did on my behalf. And now I am the benefactor of all that He did for me. Now, about 240 years ago, we fought a war in this country. And that war was fought, freedom was won, independence was declared. But what kind of nut in this country would still send his tax money to King George after that happened? What would they be thinking? And yet Christ did everything that He did for us. What kind of Christian would continue to allow sin to dominate and enslave them? after everything Christ did to set you free. It makes no sense at all. You are the benefactor of a mighty work of grace. You have been set free. It is such a radical thing that's happened in your life that it has actually placed you into Christ. It's engrafted you into His power, and it has killed everything about what you used to be. So why aren't you different? Why would you ever want to be in the likeness of Adam when you can be in the likeness of Christ?